Hi, I'm Vicki Langford with Project 3810. We are a business incubator here in West OKC, and our mission is to help people become better bosses. Project Boss is our special op to accomplish our mission. Bosses have to manage the business from sales to operations to finances. Bosses need to develop their leadership styles and effectiveness in order to achieve results. And our boss members participate in peer coaching through Boss Board meetups and Boss Board Roundtable. We expose our bosses to subject matter experts and introduce them to key players to help them achieve their business goals. High noon, everyone. We just got done with our Project 3810 Boss Board High Noon edition. We had Hank Bacchus with Bacchus Consulting. He's a business broker here with me in studio now.
Hello. Good afternoon.
And we just talked about Be Sell Ready, and Hank broke us down how to get our businesses ready to sell, what the sell process is like. So this is going to be a really good conversation that business owners need to think about very early on in the process, even during startup and launching phases. To think about those things is really important. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, you're right. And Vicki, when we talked, being sell ready I would love to see businesses to where if they had to, they could sell tomorrow. And what I want to do is just help business owners here in Oklahoma. I live and I've grown up here, and so I want Oklahoma to thrive and continuing businesses that have got great customer bases, great history on for the next generation. When I grew up, I would go visit my grandparents in a small town in southwestern Oklahoma, and we'd go to the grain elevator, we'd go to the pharmacy, the grocery store, the hardware store, all of which were independently owned. Yeah. And they thrived. And, now those aren't open. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to see that happen. I want those businesses to continue. So, yeah, that's what I do.
And how can you help that? Like, what do you do that we can count on for that?
So we help business owners that own and operate businesses in Oklahoma. I love Oklahoma. It's where I've lived and grown up, and I want it to succeed. And so we want to help those business owners transition out and find a new buyer who will be wildly successful. So we want to transfer loyalty as quickly as possible from the existing owner to the new buyer, and it has to be a win-win-win scenario. And I say the 3 wins because it has to be a good win for the seller, a win for the buyer, and a win for all the stakeholders. And those stakeholders are the employees, the customers, the vendors that thrive on that business being open.
Yeah. It
can't be the buyer wins or the seller wins. It has to be, pretty even across the board.
In the ideal. So if I own a business here in Oklahoma, when should I contact you? What's the ideal scenario of when I should contact you if I'm thinking about selling?
So hopefully you as a business owner are not just thinking about selling today and call me tomorrow for the first time. Hopefully, by having these conversations of meeting with business owners and doing this podcast, people are not just jumping right into it, but they're working on 9 things that we talk about that they can improve their business today. And when they do those, then they can call. And if they have those things worked on, there's no perfect business. We haven't found the perfect business ever. But if they have been working on those, then 30 to 45 days, they can be ready to go hit the market and go to sell.
So if they haven't been working on them, what does that time frame look like? More like 5 years, 3 years, 8 years?
I can speak from my own personal experience. I grew up in a family business where I was the 4th generation family owner, and we sold building materials. So we were heavy into new construction. And if you go back to 06, 07, 08, we had highest new start construction in the country. I don't know if we've ever surpassed that, because building was just going crazy. Well, then we know what happened. Mm-hmm. The mortgage crisis happened. Banks failed, collapsed because of the housing, because we just were so overbuilt. So we went from 06, 07, 08 to having the best years ever to 9 and 10, where we were literally 50% down in sales.
Wow.
And so at that point, I knew, oh my gosh, I don't have a sellable business. I literally, nobody would take the keys to my business if I wanted to. So from that point on, I worked on making my business be sellable. And I worked on 9 things. I researched, I read, tried to figure out. Some of it just intuitive. Mm-hmm. But it took me till 2017 And so
that's how many?
almost
like 5, 10
close
years.
to 10 years.
Yeah.
But we worked on a lot of things because we just didn't have it in a position. That's not everybody.
Yeah.
Some people can do
But
it
I
faster.
feel like for me, I feel like that's a really realistic time frame. And so as an entrepreneur, it's never too early.
No.
I think is the ultimate takeaway to contact you, to get started and start learning.
Just
and
learn about
having
what's important.
you as the outside person talking to them about the key points, which is going to be different than your CPA,
Right.
than your financial planner, than your insurance or attorney people.
Right.
So it's a different perspective of the numbers.
Yes, and we use
So-
the term enterprise value in my company because that's the price that somebody is willing and able to pay for your business. Not the book value necessarily, not the value of the assets or what it's the enterprise value. What is somebody going to be willing to pay for it? And that is going to be very different than a number that a CPA might produce.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with what they're doing. It's just
Right.
to go out and
It's
find
going
a buyer.
it's a different purpose.
It's a different purpose. Yep.
So the numbers need to be, you need to understand how the numbers impact a potential buyer and what
Correct.
those type of things are.
Correct.
And that's, you referred to your 9 things.
Right.
So what's the number one on that list of 9 things?
So clearly, the one that stands out the most, and this is going to be the most important, regardless of any business, whether across any industry, is the financial performance. So what are the past profits, and how are those going to project out in the future and continue on? So that's the first and foremost reason of why businesses are acquired. I use it like a simple stock pick analysis. If you were going to spend $1,000 to buy a stock, and at the end of the year, that stock was worth $500 and it paid you no dividend, would that be a good investment?
No.
Probably not. It's the same with business.
Yeah.
So that business needs to produce a profitability that can service the debt, produce a living wage, and then give a return, because business is highly risky. So therefore, it needs to have a higher return. If you think about what a lot of times is compared in the real estate market, where people own rental property, the return rate that a real estate investor can get is, say, of 6 or 7 or 8%. But a business owner, that return has to be much, much higher because it is highly risky and there's so much involved. And so we have to have those 3 things in order to have it. So financial performance is definitely the most important. Risk and multiples are inversely related to each other. So if you have a business that's highly risky, sales are volatile, they change year to year, your multiple that you're going to get for your business is going to be less, as opposed to a business that's had good, slow, steady growth year over year. Therefore, you're going to get a higher multiple.
Before we jump into some of these other steps, let's go ahead and address the kind of misnomer that a lot of us entrepreneurs have about, my business is worth its potential, or my business should, investors should want to pay me millions of dollars because my business is the best.
Right.
So how do you combat that? Like, how do we demystify
I
that?
think the owner's overvaluation of their company is something that we all deal with, because as an entrepreneur, you have blood, sweat, tears, equity. You are all things to everybody. You paint the office.
It's very emotional.
It's very emotional. You've started the product. You've developed it. You started it from its infancy to it's a walking toddler to it's a teenager to it's on its own. So there is all of that that's involved. But potential is hard to come up with a value. It's hard to quantify and say potential is worth some amount of nomenclature money. And so I think we talked about earlier is, as entrepreneurs, we need to realize that a business buyer is very different than an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is creative. They dream. A business buyer wants systems, employees, and profit. They don't want to have to go recreate that. They want you to have done it, and they're going to take it and grow it. So I've done all 3. I've bought into a business, I've started, and I've sold. And all three require a different mind shift. And so as owners of the business that are going to look at exit, we have to kind of walk in the shoes of the buyer and understand what it is that they're looking at.
And it's a challenge. I feel like some of the toughest conversations I've had over the last 5 years is sitting across people like you who tell me my baby's ugly.
Yeah. And, I think it's it is hard, right? Because it is your baby, and it's not that the baby's ugly. It's just that, and it can be good. Like, I've had owners that they say, it's produced a wage. It's provided jobs for my employees. I've got a roof over our head. That could be a win. If you want it to be sold and go on exponentially for generations, then that's what kind of we're talking about.
Right.
I've got no problem with a business owner going, you know what, this is as good as it's going to get, and I'm happy with it. That's great. Let me try to help you in any way that I can.
Yeah. And it's good to have the tools to be able to adjust my thinking and then get the business set up so that it can have a different outcome in a sell transaction. So even though it was disheartening and my bubble was burst, you gave me the information I need so that I can start doing the work that I need to do. And it's really not that different of work than what I'm already doing. It's just approaching it slightly different, the way we book it on the way we notate things, stuff like that.
Such a great point.
Yeah.
It's such a great point that by going through the process, you're going to make yourself a better business.
Yes.
If anybody goes through it, and by doing so, you could add more profit, and you might enjoy it more, and you might keep it forever, and that's great too.
Right.
And when you can identify those things, like I did in 2008, when I go, half of my business is gone. What can I do to put me in a position to succeed? And that's what we do. I love talking shop with business owners. And whether I sell their company or not, the fact that I get to meet and talk to the heartbeat of Oklahoma and to talk to these business owners, it's fantastic. There are so many great companies that so many people just don't even know about right here in our state.
And what all types of companies have you worked with for selling? So
I am not partial to any size of business. Being in Oklahoma City, it's not big enough to where I specify in any one specific industry. There are things that I don't do, which is easier to identify as than opposed to the things that I do. If it is a good, profitable business that's priced right, we will sell it. And that's our motto. Good
Love it.
business that's priced right, it can be sold. And I think if you can get that right, it's hard to guarantee to a business owner that their business will sell. But if you do the marketing and the write-up right and it's priced right, you've really got yourself set up for success.
Awesome. So we talked about financial performance. That was step one. Step two.
Yeah. So step two, which we'd call the concentration factor. The concentration factor deals with three specific categories. That deals with customers, employees, and vendors. And we've really seen this being exposed over the last 2 years with the pandemic and the supply chain issue. So the first is customer, where if you have 25% or more of your total revenue tied to one customer, then that will devalue your company. I was working with a business owner and, very profitable, great sales growth, but 80% of their total revenue is with one client. What happens if one client goes away? That's killer. The business might not survive. So having a diversified customer base is super important. And the more that you can spread that out, the more value you're going to be. Same with employees. You don't want to be handcuffed by a key employee who's got all the relationships with your customers, who's driving the sales, who knows the secret recipe to the formula that nobody else does. And last is vendor, and this is where we're really seeing an issue, is are you tied to a vendor that's going to supply 40, 50% of your inventory, and they're overseas.
Right.
And literally, material is not coming in to where you can fabricate, make, and then sell. Business owners are saying, my sales have declined not by lack of interest, but by lack of inventory.
Right. Yeah. Definitely seen that.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I highly recommend everybody contact
Sure.
Hank.
Just to
and
have a conversation.
Get the process started. It's not too early. I think it's important for companies, for us to have valuations, objective valuations done
Right.
on our business, to pay that money to get an initial valuation so that you can kind of see what the buyer might look like.
Right.
And again, even if you don't want to sell or have any intention of selling, you're going to end up making your business a better business for yourself.
Sure.
By going through these type of steps.
Sure. And
like
you know, one
said,
thing,
you're going to increase profit or adjust your cash flow type things. So
right.
these are
And,
good.
and you mentioned this, Vicki, and we can, reverse engineer it, right, for people.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, hey, I just want to see what I'm worth. What could I be worth in the enterprise value?
Yeah.
And let's say it's a number far less than what they want. Well, then let's reverse engineer it to see what you need to do in order to get it at the number that you want to sell for. And so that's pretty easy to just
Right.
back into it. And then you can say, okay, well, I need to do this, this, and this. And then with all your heart, energy, and passion, you go out and try to do it.
Yeah. That's, to me, information that we definitely need to have as business owners as we're doing our strategy and our planning. So highly recommend. And we don't have time to get into all 9 of your steps, so where can people go and get the other 7?
Sure. Give me a call. Go to my website, Bacchus.
Bacchus Consulting.
Consulting. BOCKUS Consulting.com.
Cool.
I love talking to people. Most of my day is filled with talking to people, whether that's buyers or sellers. So I look forward to getting to meet your audience.
Cool. And he's here on our advisory council at Project 3810, so we are very thankful and
Yeah, thank
excited
you.
to have you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
your
Vicki.
time.